Castle of Books. Benjamin lived in a house filled with books, and when I say the house was full, I mean full. Only by wriggling, pulling in his tummy, crawling or standing on tiptoe could Benjamin enter the parlor, squeeze into the kitchen, or edge into the dining room or bedroom. Just getting around the house exercised his imagination and caused it to grow bigger every day. And just how did his house become so filled with books? His father, a poet who spent his days tinkering with words, had happily collected each and every one. Behind Benjamin's house was a small courtyard. There, in the shade of the neighboring buildings, grew only one small tree, and Benjamin's dream. Benjamin's dream was to live in a castle. And not just any castle. He wanted a huge fortress with battlements, stockades, sentry posts, moats, merlins, drawbridges, pointed towers, ramparts, loopholes, and dungeons. One day, Benjamin, who was a very practical boy, realized that the best way to have a castle was to build one. So he started drawing up plans. As you might expect, he worked in secret. Benjamin had imagined his castle for so long that he had no difficulty drawing it. Once the drawings were complete, only one problem remained. Castles were made of huge stones, and of course there were none to be found in the courtyard. If he ordered 2 or 3 truckloads, his father might become suspicious. What was Benjamin to do? The solution came to him one evening when he was in the living room staring at the books piled from floor to ceiling. "I'll build my castle with books," he exclaimed. That night, Benjamin fell asleep with a smile on his face. The next morning, he set to work. Benjamin began by taking the biggest books to make the foundation of his castle. There were so many that he could take 2 or 3 from each pile without his father noticing. In fact, Benjamin quickly discovered that behind the books that he could see were more books. If he started by removing books from the back rows, the shelves would look as full as ever. During the following days, Benjamin was happy to see that his father filled the shelves with new books as quickly as he emptied them. One evening, he heard his father murmur to himself, "That's odd. I used to find it difficult to store my new books. Now it seems much easier." Encouraged, Benjamin built faster than ever. As the space was very small, Benjamin had to build high. He installed a staircase so that he could easily haul up the books. One month after construction began, the castle was already higher than the roofs of the surrounding buildings. Benjamin sometimes stood atop the structure and allowed himself a moment or two to survey the town stretching out beneath his feet. One day, Benjamin found that the castle had grown so tall that he could see the ocean. He decided that it was finally tall enough and set about laying the roof. Exactly as roofers do with tiles or slates, Benjamin carefully placed books, one overlapping the other, until the roof was complete. And it was a good thing he did, because that very evening it began to rain. The next day, as Benjamin's father completed the 26th verse of his newest poem, he needed a word that he could only find in one particular book. He started searching for it. He went around his library, through the kitchen, into the bedroom, and out to the courtyard without even noticing that he had exited the house. He entered the castle by the drawbridge, found the book he was looking for, pulled it from the castle wall, and left. Benjamin, who had quietly followed him, breathed a sigh of relief. Then he noticed a slender beam of light coming from a hole. It was the place left empty by the book. The next day, Benjamin's father finished the 78th verse of his poem and needed another word. He removed another book and left another little hole. Each day, more books and more holes. By the time Benjamin's father had written 4,000 verses, the castle was dotted with hundreds of holes. They shined like the eyes of a jack-o'-lantern. Benjamin wondered if a knight in armor would agree to live in such a flimsy fortress. Even a fairy would find it difficult to set foot in it without collapsing the whole thing. The next night, Benjamin tossed and turned. He was wakened by the wind and rain several times. He knew that his castle could not withstand such a storm. Benjamin got up. Downstairs he heard his father shouting in frustration over the poem that he had just finished. I've read every book I could lay my hands on. I've written thousands of words, but still the only place this poem is suited for is the trash, his father explained. The next morning, the sky was clear, but Benjamin's castle had crumbled. Only one small tower was left standing, and it leaned heavily to the side. The courtyard was scattered with books still wet from the rain. As Benjamin began to stack the books in a pile, he discovered a cardboard box in the corner next to the trash can. Inside, a couple of white mice were busy nibbling his father's 4,512-verse poem. Between their teeth, the words crunched like peanut shells. Benjamin called to his father, who shuffled out to the courtyard with a yawn. His eyes were heavy from the sleepless night before. Listen, father, listen to this, Benjamin said. The mice, having finished nibbling the poem, began to recite it. They delivered it with ease. Of course, there were thousands of words, but there was not one too many. Like the books in Benjamin's castle, the words worked together to form something magnificent. Benjamin and his father listened in wonder. Even the sparrows in the lime tree stopped singing to listen. It was a beautiful poem after all. When the poem ended, the mice fell silent. Father, would you show me how to write a poem? Benjamin asked. Of course, Benjamin's father agreed, if you will show me how to build a castle. And their laughter swirled about the courtyard with the falling leaves. The end.